And we are live. I am Justin, also known as the DIY Audio Guy, and I'm here as always with my partner in crime, the one and only Nick from Toys DIY. Nick, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. And you?
Decent, I guess. It's hard to say some days.
I watched this stupid, I don't know what you call it. It's not a meme, but it's one of those I don't know, shorts, I guess, of this girl who does this perfect Dora the Explorer voice or whatever. And she's talking in Spanish about her mom making her a sandwich. And she's like, that means can you make me a sandwich or something to that set? And the mom gets mad, throws the knife down off camera. You can hear that, and throws the thing right at her face, and it hits
Sandwich.
her on camera.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
hilarious.
I've seen that. Yes.
I love that. That made me have a much better day.
Sometimes that's all it takes. That's all it takes to have a good day is a good joke.
Oh, the thing is, me and my wife my wife's like, you watching that again? I'm like, yeah, it's hilarious. And then she watched it and she's like, oh gosh, this is hilarious.
Scott Bowie has chimed in and said that he's finally back back to watching after months, and he's got a whole new build since he's last watched. So
ooh, awesome!
That is awesome. We would love to hear about your build. Who else do we have in the chat? We got the usual crowd. We got the Deviant for Life. David K is here. Hi, David. We love having you here. We appreciate your support.
Oh, he's awesome.
Blake is here with us. Get some is here as well. So we've got, who else is in the chat? If you're in the chat, say hello.
Get some what?
It used to be Get Some Gaming, I think.
Yeah.
Is that the same one? It was just a name change?
No, you're right. Now it's Get Some. I guess it could be anything.
Could be anything.
Sushi.
Whatever you want to get. Whatever you want to go get.
Get some pop.
Hello, Hans. Good to see you. Glad to see a good crowd in the chat as always. So
is it pop or soda where you're at?
Where I'm at, it's Coke.
Yeah.
And you know, someone asks if you want a Coke, you'll say, "Yeah, I'll have a Coke." What kind of Coke you got? Oh, I got some Pepsi. Well, I've got great.
Yeah, you got some Pepsi Coke.
Yeah. Now, what's funny, if you get down to Atlanta, I've got a cousin of my mother's who's in Atlanta, and her husband, who died a long time ago, worked for Coke in Atlanta. And if you said Pepsi around her, she would take it as an offense. You've offended the honor of my one true love that's passed away, and she would get very unpleasant
because she loves Coke so much.
Yeah, exactly. Because her husband worked for Coke for many years apparently, and so if you mention a word that's not a Coke product around her, and you're gonna have a problem. So
speaking of that, I know what we're going to be talking about today, and I think that it might be important to talk about whether or not you should have a refrigerator in your workshop.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I'm just saying. Oh, hey, look at Scott Bowie bought a JP8.
Oh yeah, I just reviewed my JP8 on my channel, so I don't know if you saw that or not. It did decent power. I didn't have enough juice on my test bench to let it do its entire power amount, but I got 990 watts out of the thing at like 11.5 volts, so it still did pretty well.
Nice.
A BDC 412 in a 4.53 cubic foot box, 229 hertz. That is huge, and that is low.
It is. I don't know what the audio pipe BDC 412 is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with all of the audio pipe products, but that's a big box. Most car audio boxes aren't that big and aren't tuned that low.
So that's interesting. It's a 12-inch box, and I say that's 12-inch sub. I'm sorry, and the reason why I say it's interesting is typically the 4, and I'm assuming 4 is 4 ohm. Yeah, 2 by 4 ohm, so dual 4 ohm. Typically, the 12 is before the impedance with most manufacturers. I was wondering if it was a 12-inch sub, but I was like, it can't be 12 ohm, can it? It's nice.
Yeah, it's 12-inch sub. Audio Pipe's one of those brands that's really interesting. They've got some stuff that's not that good, but they also sell some really good stuff from a standpoint of what kind of budget can you get for good budget SPL gear is what I'm trying to say.
It's like a good value type thing.
Yeah. Ow. There's the cat. She's under my feet and she has decided to attack me. Okay.
Quad stack.
Good Lord.
Quad stack magnet. That makes sense.
Sorry about that, everybody. I just got attacked by my cat. Hang on.
Okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about workshops, and we're going to talk about workshop flow, and we're going to be talking about what is important to have in your workshop, what isn't part of your workshop, because I think that's kind of one of the things that you have issues with when you're looking at your workshop is what should you buy and what shouldn't you buy, especially with all of the really cool gear that you can get, especially I'd say for the price that you can get now. There's a lot of good things that you can buy for relatively inexpensive. Like for example, when WEN is a manufacturer that you can buy off Amazon that you can get a lot of decently priced things. They're all made in China, but some of their stuff, like their dust collector, is actually like the same as Jet, just rebranded. So you save a lot of money by buying one of those. So there are definitely some things that you can do. Now, Justin is really partial to this topic today because Justin just built a workshop, as you guys know, and now he's going to be talking about the workflow of that. And I want to say, first of all, before we go too far, I want to say I agree with David. You have to have a mini fridge in your workshop. If it's going to be like a workshop that you're going to be working in all day, you just have to have a mini fridge. You got to have some drinks in there. You got to have a little bit of a snack in there. I just agree with that. I think that's a great use of workshop flow. You don't want to be leaving your workshop to go grab a bottle of water that's sitting in your fridge in your house. You want to keep dragging the stuff back and forth. So we have decided that a workshop fridge, mini fridge, is a necessity in the workshop while you were gone.
And I have been debating that very same thing myself. Do I want a fridge in the new garage that I'm in the process of moving into? And I'm leaning more and more on I need one.
Yeah, I think the important thing is you don't want to be tracking all that stuff. You're going to get hot and sweaty out there while you're working. You don't want to be tracking that all back to your house just to grab a drink of water or whatever, bring it back in. Oh,
I wonder if a better
life.
option.
Oh, you need a large fridge. 25 hertz light. I read it wrong. He said wrong. No mini fridge. You need a large fridge and make it a man cave.
Yeah, decent sized fridge. I think you can at least get a 12-pack of beer and 2 cases of water in at the same time.
Or cold, as David said, cold water, apples, Corona, and more Corona. And True Voice of Reason, I actually do that. I do drink from the hose. I just turn on my I have a spigot there. I just lift up, like the old school spigots where you just kind of lift up the thing and the water comes out. We drink from that.
Oh yeah, I was raised drinking from the hose. So
yeah, just if you have water in the hose, make sure to run it for a while before you put your lips on it.
Oh yeah,
you'll burn it.
Well, yeah. And that clears out whatever trash might be in the hose. You don't want to get it right the first.
That is another good point too. All right, we've gone way off topic, so
that's okay. No, we're on topic.
We are on topic.
Sorry, I had to run. The cat likes to hang out beneath my feet, and sometimes she decides that clawing and biting my feet is the appropriate thing to do, and so she's now out in the garage. So we're done with that for the night.
All right, so let's hear your big workflow things. Some of the tools you think you should. I'm curious too. I know what I think. I know we disagree as well on some things.
So this is the thing, right? So the question for you, the question for everybody out in the chat, the discussion for tonight is when you're in your DIY workspace, your whatever it is you happen to have where you can get some work done, whether that's you're just out on the patio, whatever the case might be. How do you set it up to get work done efficiently? And what tools do you absolutely have to have? And what tools can you just completely live without? For example, how important is a drill press?
I don't have one, and I don't plan to get one anytime soon. But I do have a CNC that can work as a drill press. So, but I personally don't think you need a drill press.
Curious about the guys in the chat, what are their thoughts on a drill press? I'd like to have one, simply because you can do things like if you need to make a lot of precision cuts, holes, you can line those things up and repeated cuts, repeated holes, that kind of thing. I watch a lot of woodworking channels on YouTube. It'd be nice to have one, but my thoughts is that I don't need a small drill press. One of these tiny ones that's like $60 from Harbor Freight, or the tiny Ryobi one from Home Depot is of no use. I need a big one. If I'm going to have one, it needs to be huge and take up a lot of space.
You want a full stand one.
Exactly, like a 12-inch drill press, right? Something that's got some size to it where you can actually get some work done.
See, I agree with Blake. He said, hey, drill press is really nice when you need it, but it's kind of niche. And I agree with that. I would say that it's very low priority for me to have. The good thing about a drill press is it doesn't have to take up a lot of room.
True.
So, I mean, you have that going for you. If you are working on a workspace workflow and you do have to get one, it's not a machine that you have to be concerned about in that regards.
Brian Steele said on a scale of 1 to 5, he'd give it a 1.
I agree. I might even give it below a 1.
All right. So here's the way I like to think about these kind of things. If you had enough space to either put a decent fridge or a decent drill press in this one spot, instead of going to take up the same amount of space, right? Which one do you pick?
Fridge.
The fridge. Yeah.
Because you're going to be using the fridge like daily in there, and you're going to use the drill press once a year.
The true voice of reason says that he has an antique drill press from the 50s with a newer motor on it. That would be cool. Now, if I had an antique one from the 50s, I'd have it.
I actually had one before I left. I didn't bring it with me. I gave it back to the guy who gave it to me because I didn't have I didn't have the space to bring it. And those are cool too, because they have belts on top, and you change the belts in order to change, the amount of torque, I guess.
I came real close to buying one at an auction. It was a larger bench top drill press that was, old, from the 60s or something like that. I forget. I think it may have been a Craftsman. And I was looking at it thinking, do I want to haul this thing all the way down to the house? And I thought, no, not really. And I'm glad I let it go, because what I realized after someone else outbid me on it was that I didn't have space to put it. Yeah. And so I think that I'm only going to buy tools if I have a spot to put the tool. And I think that's probably a good rule.
Brian said, hey, maybe you can DIY a drill press with a vertical sled mount for a hand drill. And there are a lot of people that do that. And that's true. That wouldn't fit your idea, most likely, because you said you want a really large one. But for most people, if they only need to utilize it every once in a while. The other thing, too, is depending on how accurate you need these things, you can also buy a drill with a level on it now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it tells you if you're drilling straight down. I mean, if you're doing it for like feet on a speaker or subwoofer or something, you just really want it to be level more than anything else.
They make these portable drill press stands where you can take any drill and put in it. It looks kind of like a plunge router bit, right? So, if you wanted to make sure you're drilling perfectly straight holes when you're drilling your speaker hole, your bolt holes for your speakers, something like that would be cool. But there you go. I'm trying to see.
So what tools? All right. Well, what tools are on you have to have for workflow? Or what is at least one of them? Because a drill press, I think we all agree, is kind of like, meh.
So a drill press is a no. So here's the question for you. How important is an air compressor?
So this is where I know you and I disagree. I would say an air compressor is very important. In fact, I'd put that near the top. And I would not get a pancake air compressor. I would get a bigger one. You get one from Harbor Freight. You don't have to get like anything crazy expensive. Right. Like I got one from Harbor Freight. That's a pretty big one. But here's the reason why. The air compressor can do everything. It can clean off your tools. It can, like when your dust goes everywhere and you need to blow something off real quick, it can blow it off. Your air compressor can paint. If you want to go ahead and get a real nice finish on it, you can go ahead and use and you can even get a cheap paint, sprayer from Harbor Freight once again for $20. You can use air tools on it, so you can nail things, you can staple things. You want to add insulation later, you want to staple all of that. Well, that's easy with that. I mean, heck, you can even add air tools to be able to take apart things like your table saw and stuff when they get damaged. Right. So for me, an air compressor is so multifunctional that I think it's one of the tools that I would say comes more in handy than you would imagine And I would absolutely have it.
So 20 years ago, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly.
Oh,
Maybe
David,
15 years ago, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly. But today, the lithium battery technology has progressed to the point, and there's such a wide variety of power tools available that virtually everything you mentioned that can be done with an air compressor can be done with something else, with something else.
so you're
And
gonna
so
paint with a 20-volt battery.
painting is about the only thing I think where you would really need an air compressor, or if you actually need to air up a tire.
Or if you need to take apart your table saw, because here's the deal: those battery ones don't have the torque that something like that your air gun's gonna have. So if you have
You know
anything
what though? If
stuck,
you grab one of those high-end Milwaukee ones, those things have a lot of torque.
I'll tell you what: you take that battery powered Milwaukee and you try to take a tire off your car, and you tell me how it works.
Now, if we were talking about a heavy duty truck or a tractor or something, if we're working on 18 wheelers, I'd be with you on that. But I'm thinking for just a car, I think if you have an impact wrench, an impact driver, battery powered, because mechanics use those all the time. You go to any mechanic shop and you'll see them with their their tool truck brand drills going in there, right? So you can get an impact driver that can take nuts and bolts off cars just fine. And again, if we were working on 18 wheelers, I'd be with you. But I think that today, I don't think we need air compressors anymore.
Uh, I will say everyone in the chat disagrees with you.
Everyone's allowed to disagree. They don't have to be right. They can be wrong. Stu's Custom Shop says that Milwaukee 18-volt half-inch will remove any bolts you need in the vehicle.
And I'm not stating the fact that it may not be able to remove a bolt. It's how long will it last after it removes that bolt? How long do you have that battery power for if it has to use that much torque? I mean, that's the more the concern I have. It's not so much that will it not work. It's how long will it work for and how many batteries do you have to go through, where air is free and the air is practically free, I should say. And the air compressor fills back up relatively quickly if you need to.
Brian Townsend is with me. And of course, I have the ability to pick out chats and you can't. So I'm only going to pick ones who agree with me.
You could do that. Yeah, he says, I barely use my air compressor anymore. Battery powered tools are the way to go. And
Robert Clark, Chevy 5500 Kodiak trucks and my half-inch Milwaukee takes off the tires, no problem. So and you're not entirely wrong, Nick. There's still a lot of good uses for an air compressor.
I'm not wrong. An air compressor still has more torque than the battery power. I mean, that's just the truth.
All right.
Okay,
so you've got space in your shop for a fridge, an air compressor, or a drill press. You can have one. Which one?
Air compressor.
Air compressor before a fridge.
Yes.
See, I would do the fridge.
Okay.
I would do the fridge. So that's now our metric. We have enough space for one tool. Where would you put this tool in the list?
I mean, I think you're fine to do that, but with DIY, you should be painting a lot more than what you're doing, unless you're just rolling everything.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I do have a pancake compressor. I'm not going to upgrade that compressor. It's going to get me by until it dies. And I will run some air hose, probably some metal pipe. And I'm going to put them on put the air hose on a reel hanging above me in the garage. Because the thing I like the least about the air compressor is I'm always dragging that damn hose around everywhere. And excuse me. What I don't like is I don't like the hose. And that's why I don't like air tools. I'm trying to get away from anything with a cable or a cord or a wire on it, because that's just something else to trip on. So I'll install a hose reel at some point, but it's not high on the list.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are talking about the half-inch ones, which are significantly better than what most people have when they're talking about battery powered. When I'm talking about battery powered ones too, I'm talking about like your normal everyday DIY DeWalt Ryobi, basic drive, but the half-inch nicer ones, they're nice. I mean, obviously we all know mechanics use those.
Oh yeah. All right. So
It is nice to have the batteries too. In the essence, you don't have to run the wire. I would still rather have the air compressor overall. It's the tools are cheaper and it's more multifunctional still.
Fair enough. So here is a question that has been brought up when we talked about this before. How important is a table saw? Because one of our viewers had mentioned that a better option might be to go with a track saw instead of a table saw. If you could only have one, a track saw or a table saw, which route would you go?
It depends on what I'm doing. I mean, if I'm having to rip a lot of things, then I'd probably do the track saw because it's much easier for one person to rip with a track saw. But if I'm making multiple different types of cuts and things of that nature, then, a table saw. For me, since I use almost everything, I do almost everything on the CNC now, I usually only have to rip the board in half or something like that. So for me, I would rather have a track saw. But for most people, I think a table saw is much better.
So you're going to rip a board in half and put a half sheet on the CNC, and the CNC is going to do all the work for you.
Yeah, like a sheet good in half. Correct.
Yep. Stu down here is a big fan of the track saw. I noticed that Ryobi has a track saw out now, and I'm kind of curious. Since I've got Ryobi battery power tools, I think it'd be kind of cool to do a track saw to handle the bigger material. But I still like the idea of a table saw. I'm a table saw fan.
Yeah, I mean, a table saw is obvious. Once again, they're more versatile, right? Like a table saw is still going to be more versatile. It's going to have more power, assuming that you have a nice table saw. It's going to have a lot more power than your track saw or your circular saw. Circular saw is a great idea. I have one. We both use that Craig jig, right? That kind of thing. It's kind of flimsy, but it works for, in a pinch. I like it. I use it all the time to cut my wood down. I don't have any issue with that. But the table saw is going to have, once again, more power most of the time.
Robert Clark says you can put your beer on a table saw.
That's true.
I don't think I'd recommend mixing beer and power tools together.
Yeah, and I mean the other issue with a track saw, which we haven't brought up, but I'll bring up now, is that when you buy a track saw, most of them are proprietary. So if something ever happens to your track saw, all that track saw fence and stuff, you have to buy either that exact track saw again, or you have to buy a whole new system again. Where a table saw, if you buy a nice table saw, if anything happens to it, you should be able to at least buy a new motor.
All right. I saw a comment. Regular Guy Audio said that his least used saw is his 12-inch compound miter saw. Do you have a miter saw?
I do.
How often do you use it?
When I'm doing trim work in my house, all the time.
All the time, but not for audio projects.
Not really. No, I don't. Not as often. I do use it on some things, but not as often as I'd use a table saw or anything.
So I do have a miter saw, and I like my miter saw. I got it cheap. I built a table just for it, made some custom stop blocks and stuff, did a video on it. I don't plan on doing any videos on shop furniture because when I do videos on shop furniture, they don't get any views. But I would say that if we're going back to our metric of you've got enough space for one tool, you've got refrigerator, air compressor. What else did we say? Drill press. Now let's add the miter saw to.
Well, we can throw drill press off because we don't need. Yeah.
So the drill press is off.
We never picked drill press.
Yeah. So you're down to miter saw or refrigerator if you had to choose between the two.
No, I'm still at air compressor.
Oh, you're still at air compressor. So I'm at refrigerator. That's got my spot. So between miter saw and refrigerator, I'm picking the fridge. And so you're down to
between those two, I would take the fridge too. But if it's between those three, I'd still take the air compressor.
So you're still air compressor.
Well, yeah, you can buy air compressor tools for so inexpensive, and they do so. David was with me, and he was saying the same thing. Hey, I don't have to buy batteries. I don't have to recharge them. I don't have to worry if they go bad, all that stuff. But then I would put fridge second, and then miter saw third.
I tell you what I don't like about miter saws. When you go for a sliding miter saw, virtually all of them slide to the back. And so now if you had, a 2-foot workbench, you need to pull that workbench another foot away from the wall in order to get the
Yeah.
slide mechanism to have room to work. But there are a couple that don't slide. And if I were going to get a 12-inch miter saw, I would get some that didn't slide. I think it's there's two brands. I think Delta is one of them, and the other one I think is a similar brand to Delta. I think same company makes it. It has these folding arms.
So I have a 12-inch miter saw that's not a compound miter saw, not a sliding
slider.
one. Yeah, and I like it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But even that takes up a lot of room. It's also very, even if you hook up like a hose to it, you're going to get a lot of dust when you utilize that. So
the dust collection on my miter saw is terrible. It's a 10-inch miter saw, and it's just pretending to collect dust. It is no.
It cuts maybe like a 10%, maybe if you're lucky. It's
yeah.
So I mean, that's the other big thing too. Is it's a messy. Whenever I get done with it, I hate you have to clean up the work area when you're done with it because it's just dust is everywhere.
Right. There's no way around it. So you're if you weren't doing trim work around the house, if you were just doing audio, would you have a miter saw?
No. Well, I mean, I might, but it wouldn't be on the top of my list.
Be lower down the list.
Yeah. When I didn't have as much nice equipment, I did use my miter saw a lot more than I do now.
Yeah, I'm with Brian on this one. Really, really low in a DIY audio workshop. If I were going to have one, I would want one that would be huge so I can make a good, like about a 16-inch cut for those times when you need to make a wide cut like that.
Well, a miter saw is nice if you don't have, like, if you have a table saw and you don't have like a sled for your table saw, miter saw is nice to have. Someone else said, hey, it's nice if you need to make a lot of repetitive cuts. And it's true. You can put a stop, on your miter saw and just keep blocking it off, which is what I do. I have wood tables on either side of it, and I just slide it to that wood and I screw a piece of wood in,
Yeah.
and just right in there. That way I can just bump it and cut it.
That's I only use my miter saw when I'm building shop furniture and I'm cutting, like, say, the legs for the shop furniture, and I've got stop blocks on either side of it, and I just set the stop block, measure once, and start cutting. So I mean, if I didn't have it, I would do the same thing on a table saw with a sled, because you can set a stop block on a sled too.
Yeah, you can. Well, depending on how long of a cut you need.
Yeah, of course, it depends how big your table saw is as well. So, I mean, if you've got a big enough saw, I mean, because you can get saws that are, 4 or 5 feet wide.
So for me, like, here's the thing I would say too, because we keep talking about table saw, and I'm going to say I love a table saw, but I think a table saw is best if used in a workshop if you have a table built around it, where you have an outfeed table and side feed tables, things that you can utilize to cut large pieces, like big sheets of MDF or something of that nature.
I agree. If you don't have the ability to handle a big piece of MDF, then it's not that useful. You need plenty of room for the outfeed. You do need side feed tables, and the table saw that I've been working off of, it can do a 30-inch wide cut, but that thing, you don't want to do a 30-inch wide cut on that thing. It's probably not safe.
And I'll tell you, the two, I would say, if people said, hey, what are the two things that you need the most if you're just getting into this industry, I would say forgo all saws, first of all, because you can typically get Home Depot or Lowe's or any big box store to cut it for you. All right. So if you can't afford a circular saw, which my first thought would be go grab a cheap circular saw. You get one at yard sale for under $20 typically. But then the two things you absolutely need is a sander. You need a sander.
Handheld sander, a palm sander.
Handheld palm sander. I don't care which one, whatever. And a router. Those would be my two favorite things to get. You can cut wood with a router if you want to. If you want to set up something like that. I wouldn't, but you could. But you'll need it to cut circles and other things. So, or should have it.
25 Hertz to Life has landed on one of these things that I think is extremely important: a nut and bolt organizer. That is a must have. That's a must have. I think I grew up on a farm, and because we just went through too many nuts and bolts for all kinds of things, we actually had a huge like wall of a big, we call it the bolt bin, nuts and bolts and washers of every size and shape imaginable. And if you needed one, you just ran and got one. And now when I need one, I got to run to the damn hardware store because I don't have this giant pile of nuts and bolts to work with. So I saw another comment that I wanted to highlight. All right. El Fuego said that a benchtop belt sander is next on his shopping list. What are your thoughts on a benchtop sanders in general? I think Nick has frozen. So Nick has been having camera problems before we got started. And so it appears that he has frozen and he stopped talking too, which means his audio may have died or he may have muted his mic and he's probably trying to get his camera set up. So we'll just go ahead and keep going. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and El Fuego brought it up, is the benchtop sander. Yeah, we just lost Nick. Oh, well, we'll catch him up here in a minute. He can get back in. So have y'all seen these things? There are these kind of like a benchtop sander on its side that you can change the piece out until you can have a whole sanding bench, or turn it into an oscillating spindle sander. And I wonder if one of those would be worth having. Let me see if I can pull one up and see an example of that. Hang on one second while I pull one up. Here we go. This is the Harbor Freight version. Rigid has one. There are several different versions like this. So y'all in the chat, what do you think about a machine like this? How useful is something like this where you can basically use it as a belt sander? You wouldn't even need like a disc sander if you've got one of these, just this alone. And of course it has the spindles down below that you can swap out. So tell me in the chat, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down on one of these right here, the oscillating edge belt and spindle sander. Is that a good thing? Coop W says it is garbage. Anybody else who agrees this garbage? Is it worth buying? $219 for the Harbor Freight version. And of course, there's other versions of it. Regular Guy Audio says that they love it. Blake says it's good for finishing work. So this might be something that's worth having. So we might put it on the list of tools you might want to have in order to speed up your workflow. And I have no idea what happened to Nick. He might send me a Facebook message. Hang on one second. He just lost power. So his power went out at his house. So he lives in a little bit of a rural area. So that happens sometimes when you live in the middle of nowhere. And now I got to carry the entire show by myself, which is not something I'm used to doing. 25 Hertz to Life says a mini oven to cook a pizza and leftovers. Now, like a microwave or something might be worth having. So maybe that would be a good one. And while we're waiting on Nick to get power again, Brian's got a good comment. The main sander is an 18-inch flat ceramic tile with sanding paper stuck on its surface. That's a really good thing to do. I like that idea. I've seen a lot of people build sanding blocks and sanding sticks just by taking some super glue and gluing some sandpaper onto scraps of wood and whatnot. And that's always an efficient way to get things done. And while I've got the screen share going, let me pull up this right here to kind of walk y'all through what it is I'm planning on doing with my new garage setup. So the entire thing is finished as of now. And I'm in the process of moving all the stuff in. And this is roughly how I'm going to have it laid out. Towards the front of the garage, I'm going to have an outfeed table That's the outfeed table right here, and the saw right behind it. And then I'm going to make sure I've got floor space reserved to pull the truck in. So the idea here is that I can keep my truck inside of the garage along with all this other stuff. And then I'm going to do the dust collection right here. Now, the question is, should I go for a big dust collector, like say the Harbor Freight dust collector, or should I just stick to the shop vac dust collector? So let me know what y'all think about the dust collection situation. Is it worthwhile to go for one of those big, powerful dust collectors, or should you just stick with a shop vac? Rob, Nick has abandoned me. He actually just sent me a Facebook message. He's lost power at his house, and that is where he is. So that happens from time to time, I suppose. It's been a while since I've lost any power. So, but it's good to have you here, Rob. And I were just talking today about shop stuff in general. Then the plan is this back bench back here is where I'm going to have my main workbench and test bench. This area right here is where I'm going to go to when I need to wire up a harness or something like that. This is where I'm going to be plugging in it's where it helps have a second person on, so you don't have to talk the entire time, stream of consciousness. But back here in the back is where I'm going to be plugging in my amp dyno station, where I'm going to be plugging in my soldering iron, and this is where I do all my electrical work on vehicles. The miter saw table is going to go here, and I'm in the process of building a router table with a lift to go right here in this spot. And so looking at the chat, as far as dust collection go, bigger is better on the dust collection. So David K says, go for the biggest dust collection I can get. Anyone else have any thoughts on dust collection? Blake says a true dust collector is unbelievably worth it. So I'm thinking a dust collector might be the way to go. Any room to hang stuff from the roof? So I've actually got 10-foot high ceilings in this thing, so I do have room to hang stuff from the roof. I was thinking about adding a hoist, hanging it from the ceiling joist over here. So if I had something heavy in the back of the truck, I could just hoist it right out. So what are your thoughts on adding something like a hoist or a lift to a workshop? Is that something that's worth having? Box fan with filters to help with airborne dust. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's a good idea. I think it would be kind of cool to have some just big fans in the space so we could keep the place cool in the summertime, because it's going to get hot out there. Get some says you can make a good dust collector with a barrel and a shop vac. Coop says, got to have the dust collector. So I think I probably will go ahead and upgrade to the dust collector. Go ahead and get a big industrial one if I can. Dehumidifiers. Now, I don't know if a dehumidifier is worth it or not, especially when you've got a open garage door. So hot in the south? No, not at all. It's just humid. That's just part of it. What I think I'll probably do is right here in this area, I've got two big windows, and I think I'll probably end up putting some big fans in those windows. Like I'll build a shelf right there to put some fans on, and now I can pull some air through the garage. Coop says, put the noisy stuff outside. Not a bad idea. Brian Townsend says, go for the mini split for HVAC. That's not a bad idea either. Eventually, I'm going to insulate this thing and end up putting some type of system in. It might just be a window unit. Mullen Performance is here. Good to see you, Mullen. And of course, they're talking about a UPS, a backup for a computer would be handy to have. I wouldn't mind having one of those as well. Most of those UPS backup systems for computers just keep the computer powered up long enough for you to save things and shut down. So not that powerful. Rob says, as long as we have air moving, it'll be all right. And I agree. I said earlier, I grew up on a farm. We never had any air conditioning in any of the stuff we had on the farm. All the buildings were just barns and sheds, and we would just turn on big fans. So Jaji Brothers Engineering on the dust collection says, big as you can afford or fit in your space, you are sucking that stuff in, and most of it is dangerous and can be cancer forming, especially MDF. Yeah, Rob, if you want to come join the party, I will send you a Facebook message real quick with the StreamYard link, because then I won't just be up here by myself stumbling around trying to talk to the guys in the chat. All right, Rob, that link should be heading your way. Just send it via Facebook message. And while Rob is getting ready to join in, we will just go right ahead. Swamp coolers. Swamp cooler is more cost effective than an HVAC system. I like the idea of a swamp cooler, but the problem with a swamp cooler is they add more humidity into the situation. And I would like to get some out. I know that they've created this new thing that I think is kind of cool. It's basically the same idea as a swamp cooler. Instead of blowing over the cold air over the ice, it actually circulates over the ice. So it's like a cooler with a heat exchanger on it, and you can just off you go. So a little bit more of a high-tech swamp cooler. Mullen Performance says he has a 24 by 24 garage, is barn style, and the walls are packed with insulation. I've seen yours on your channel, and it looks fantastic. Mine's 24 by 30, so it's just a hair bigger than yours. In the wintertime, it doesn't get that cold. I'll probably get some type of propane burner or something like that so I can heat it up quickly in the wintertime if I need to do a glue up or something. But for the most part, I'm just going to tough it out. The winters here are actually pretty mild, all things considered. The main thing is I can park a vehicle in the garage in the wintertime, and I don't have to worry about having to scrape my windshields in the morning when I get up. Regular Guy Audio says, take those silica gel packs that come in everything that gets shipped to you and throw them in your speakers in the basement to keep the moisture out. That's not a bad idea at all. I might start saving those, start using them for something productive. Radiant barrier insulation is a must if you have an open roof. I think that's probably a good idea. I wouldn't mind going spray foam. I think it'd be kind of cool to spray foam everything. So Robert High Five Vega is going to jump on, and he's going to add to the conversation. Robert High Five Vega, thanks for joining me here in a pinch to kind of fill in for Nick while he's out and off the grid. So what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Talking about shops. I love tools. You know that.
Man, the last time you were on the show with us, you had the same haircut I did. And look at you with all that hair, man.
Oh, I know. It's actually, it needs to be cut right now. I'm willing to grow it out some, but not. We're not going to go hippie here. It's going to be a thing.
So Rob, you joined us a little bit late, and so I'd like to get your opinion on a couple of things.
Yeah, shoot.
What are some tools that are must have if you were going to put together a shop, right? So if you were making the High Five Vega shop, what are some things that are a must have? For example, do you think a drill press is a must have, or is that a leave it off the list?
Dude, it's so like if you're only going to be doing box builds, I would say drill press is not absolutely necessary. But if you want to start doing any kind of metal fab, like aluminum, if you're wanting to do some custom distribution block, you need a decent drill press. That's the thing. It's like if it's only a wood shop, I think you could get away without it. If it is going to be more than a wood shop, I would consider it.
What are your thoughts on a shop press? Again, for like doing fabrication work, because I know Car Audio Fab, for example, likes to do those molded metal projects where he has the mesh and he molds it, and he has a shop press for that. Deviant says, turn your mic up, Rob.
Okay, I can bump up here. Let me see.
Sounds fine to me, but maybe I'm just loud.
Yeah.
But do you think a shop press is worth having?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of mechanic work, so in my experience, a shop press is going to be handy for ball joints and stuff like that. But besides that, I think like the pressing of the, mesh if you need to make some kind of mold for something. I don't know that I'd get an expensive one. I'd probably get the cheap Harbor Freight one that's like $125.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be worth it if you get it cheap enough.
I think that's one of those things that it's like the big dust collector from Harbor Freight. They were on sale
Right.
this last week, and they were $200 on sale. And so I did pick one up. Actually, I've been talking about it on the channel. So I went ahead and ordered a nice air filter for it. It came in today.
Yeah.
I spent almost as much on the air filter as I did on the
Right.
on the thing. So
They got a lot
so
of
I am
hacks for
going.
those. People do a lot of hacks
Oh,
with those, you know.
so I was asking questions. I forget about what I'm trying to figure out how best to wire it. I'm going to need to add another circuit to the circuit breaker and run the vac on its own circuit.
Yeah.
And so I popped into the Den of Tools
I've
Facebook page.
seen it. I've seen the post. We're both we're both nerds. We're both on the same page.
And people were giving links to like you can replace the impeller in those things with an impeller with bigger blades apparently and upgrade the impeller. I'm looking at that going, I don't know if I'm going to fool with that, but
Yeah.
if this thing, after I run it, I've already ordered one of those things that fits on the top of a trash can. That's just a tube in, tube out to separate.
Right.
And it's basically the cheapest separator that's out there. And so today, before the live stream, I went and put the good filter on it and fired it up and threw a handful of sawdust in it and watched it, suck the sawdust up. That's what it does.
That's going to be nice.
It's got a lot more suction than a shop vac.
Dude, that's going to be such a nice upgrade. Like even if you spent $1,000 on dust collection, you would still be happy with the amount of money you spent. So spending $300, $400, $500, definitely worth it.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna run some. For now, I'm just gonna use some of the 4-inch tubing to run to things.
Right.
The first thing that I actually build, first thing I run on the run through the saw in the new shop is going to be the stuff I need to build a box to go under the router table. You remember last year we were talking about this. I bought one of those router lifts and I never had the chance to put it together. And I went ahead and bought some melamine and built a router table. So I've got a router table with a lift sitting in it, and it's looking nice and ready to go. I just need to build a box underneath it so I can hook the dust collection up to it. So,
dude, I would love that.
Along nice.
That's like my dream would be to have a multi-router table, just a minimum of 2, just so I can have roundover bits on one, flush cut, flush trim bits, flush cut bits on the other.
The way I've got it built, I can take the top off and cut a second one in. So if I really wanted to do that, I could. And I've got 2 routers. Yeah. So, all right, Deviant for Life ask a question. A surface planer, yes or no? Is a planer important for an audio shop? For a wood shop, I'm going to say 100% yes. I'd love to have a planer. I'd actually rather have a jointer than a planer. I'd like to have both. Right. But for what
you're not going to be doing a lot of rough cut. I mean, a planer, if you're going to be using like a lot of solid wood, probably, but a joiner, you're right. A joiner for us would be more important if you're going to be using, and even it's still a wood shop thing. I think for the stuff we use, we don't need either. But if you're going to be doing, you never want a unitasker, so you want your shop to be kind of a little bit of everything.
Right.
So that's something you got to consider.
So, okay, as I think about how useful a planer, jointer, planer, the 2 separate tools would be, I would love to try to make some boxes that look really nice.
Yeah.
That's because I make stuff and I look at it and I go, it doesn't look all that nice. I'm not happy with anything that I make. And, you see all these woodworking channels on YouTube where the guys are taking chunks of hardwood, cutting them up, gluing together, running them through jointers and planers and gluing them back together and rearranging them and gluing them back together. Something like that would make a great speaker baffle. And it would be better than just using a piece of hardwood because it'd be directionally stable because all those pieces are going 1,000 different directions.
Right.
And so something like a planer, so you could joint something together because you can joint on a table saw.
Right.
And then maybe put something together and have some cool patterns and whatnot on the front of your speaker baffle. That might be kind of cool.
That definitely would be cool. It'd be a kind of one-off situation, but it would be. I would say, like I've used actually as an experiment, I built an enclosure out of pine.
Mm-hmm.
So 1x4 pine, and I know I done it on a 6.5 enclosure. It's like a 0.5 ported 35 hertz. It's not bad. I don't know how well it'll translate too. Like if you tried it with a 15, you're probably gonna have some issues. But
Yeah.
on a 6-inch subwoofer enclosure, it wasn't bad. It sounds okay, and there's no crazy resonance or
I think it would probably be fine for a set of bookshelf speakers. And there are things you can
yeah.
do to help lower the resonance. There's all kinds of tricks for the resonance and stuff. So tell me your opinion on the layout that I've got. And so the way
All
I've
right.
got my plugs arranged, this layout's pretty much set in stone at this point. So the idea here is on the right-hand side, I've got space to pull the truck in.
Right.
And then on the left-hand side, there's going to be an outfeed table, the table saw, dust collector in this area here. I can
Right.
zoom in. And then router table, which is extra tall, by the way. I've already built it and it's really tall. My miter table. And then after that, it's my main workbench where I've got all of my soldering iron, my power supply, that kind of stuff. At least one table on wheels that I can roll around. Then I'm going to make buy some toolboxes and put in this corner over here. And so what are your thoughts on the workflow? What could be done to improve the workflow?
I'll tell you right now that the top left corner on your workbench, that spot that conjoins with this is
Yeah.
going to be a collection spot. Since the way it's set up, that's in every shop I've ever been in, worked in. If it's not accessible by walking, it's a collection spot for stuff, which is fine. But maybe plan some storage in that spot or
Gotcha. Gotcha. Right. It's a spot where this stuff's going to pile up.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not happy with the toolboxes over here because I find I'm always running to get tools. I've already got a couple that I've got placed over there.
Right.
So Nick has jumped into the chat and the power is out. And so he will not be back for the night, but that's okay because Rob saw me struggling trying to run the show by myself and he jumped in and saved the day. So I'm not up here babbling to myself.
Hope you get power, Nick, soon.
Yeah. That's what's funny is so Nick and I aren't that far from each other. And so if it was a storm that took his power out, it's going to be here in a couple of hours.
Right.
And I wasn't aware of any bad weather moving through the area. So maybe something went wrong, like a car hit a pole or something like that. When you live a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, cars hit poles and you lose power for a day. So
you know what might be a good addition under that table, your workbench table? A lazy Susan underneath there. For stuff you don't use all the time, because that's just going to be an empty space.
Yeah, I like that idea. So this space over here, it's actually, the way it actually is laid out, everything's slid towards the front a little more, and there's room to stand right here because I've got pull out drawers in this workbench here, and so they have to have, those things they're 24-inch deep and they're on full extension drawer slides. I made those myself. And so I got 2 banks of those and they'll slide all the way out. This space in between 2 big windows, I'm going to put a shelf there and put some fans there. So that'll be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to keep the air moving. It's hot in the South. We already know it is. We live in the South, but if you keep air moving, it's bearable.
Right. That is the truth. You just got to keep the air moving.
Yeah.
What are some things, what are your thoughts on including like a hoist in the ceiling? Because you can go to like Harbor Freight and get a hoist that can lift 600 pounds pretty cheap. Is something like that worth having?
You know what? I mean, we're not getting any younger. And some of these big enclosures, I think it would be, especially if you don't already have like a lift cart. If you have a lift cart, we both watched the Tool Bear. He's big on the lift cart, and for good reason. They're useful for heavy stuff. But I would consider a hoist depending on how I was going to place it, what I was going to use it. Is it going to be on a track system? Is it going to be stationary? There's a lot of factors into whether I'd want one or not because you can get them cheap enough.
I am going to do a hoist simply because I think it's a good idea to have one just in case I need it again. Not getting any younger. I don't want to hurt my back again. And I've got one of those lift carts, and that thing is, I couldn't have gotten all the stuff moved in without it because that big workbench with the pulled out drawers, all I did was take the loose stuff off the thing and jack it up with that sucker, and off we go.
Heck yeah. They're expensive, but they're worth it.
El Fuego's got a question. The shop audio system. What kind of audio system do we need in the shop? I don't have an audio system in the shop at the moment. I've got an old
Right.
receiver sitting out there in the way that I need to hook some speakers up to. I guess I just need to build some speakers. I just need to actually make some shop speakers. What I'd like to do is use some of those panels, right, with the insulation foam,
Yeah.
and put the little exciters on them and hang about 10 of those from the ceiling.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
So no matter where you
Yeah.
are, you've got a speaker
You can
above
hear
you.
it. You know what I use right now? An old cheap soundbar we used to have. And I hung it on the wall, and I had car stereo in there, right? But it carries so much further with car stereo, and I was getting some complaints. I was like, you know what, we'll dial this back just enough where I can hear it, and it'll be good enough.
Brian still says no receiver in the shop. They're doing a really good job of dust collection. You know what?
Right.
If it's an old one, so the I have a Denon receiver. It's nothing fancy. It was my home theater receiver for the home theater system inside the house. And every time we get a lightning strike, I would lose an HDMI channel on it. And that thing got to the point where only the front panel channel was working, and it was like, well.
Yeah.
So that one is the one that's out in the garage, and if it dies, it dies. David, thank you
Yeah.
so much for the $10 super chat. That means the world to me. It's so awesome to get that kind of support from people, and it's not just the money, it's the support, and it's just really awesome. Thank you so much, David. So Rob, let me show you this right here. Let me see if I can find a picture of this. Give me just a second. So what are some of the things you would include in a shop? What do you think? Sanders, what are some things? How important is a refrigerator to you?
A refrigerator is not so important to me because my shop is my garage and it's right next to the house. But depending on how far your house is away from your shop, you don't want to be walking in mud, possibly. I definitely consider it because you're going to need some kind of frosty beverage, maybe a hard iced tea or something,
And for you, it's more about the getting back and forth,
Right.
as opposed to anything else.
See, to be honest with you, I drink enough of these Coke Zeros that I don't need to be close to them. Honestly, I should just keep water in there, like cold waters. That would be my best bet. Because you know what? You know how it gets when you get out there, and if
Yeah.
you're not watching it, man, you will just start pounding these colas down before you know, and it's like then you feel worse, and yeah, it's a big ordeal.
Deviant for Life is correct. I need a Maker's Mark cabinet.
Right.
All right. So here's what it looks like on the inside. It is 24 by 30. And I've got 8 5,000 lumen LED lights.
I was just going to say it looks very well lit because it looks like you shot this at night.
Yep. I was standing outside, took a picture at
Right.
night. So it's well lit.
Right.
Let's see here. Oops. That is not what I wanted to show you. Let's see if I can find another picture here. So yeah, the lighting's pretty solid.
Yeah,
It does the job. So that's some pretty good lights. As far as the size goes, so there's a shot of it with my truck in it.
Okay.
So from the back corner, so lots of room, plenty of room to get the vehicle in as well. Here's a shot with, here we go. Just for kicks and giggles, I got the entire fleet in it.
There you go.
If I'd have been driving the cars and parking them myself instead of waving in family members, I could have probably gotten all 3 of them in 100%. But the 2
Right.
Kias back and front to each other, are just about 2 inches shy of the garage door closing. So just for kicks and giggles, I want to see if I can get the entire fleet in there.
Right.
So that's my kid's car and my wife's car, all of them fit in there as well. So that's a load of fun. I'm adding some toolboxes. It's got a pair of these from Harbor Freight. I'm going with the blue color. It's kind of a channel color theme. So
Right.
I got the Kicker stool. Thanks a lot to the guys
got
for
one
Kicker.
right over here.
Yeah. So thanks to Kicker for hooking me up with some stools. That's always nice. And let's see here. Where is here we go. Ooh.
Oh, a saw stop. Man,
Yes.
went all out. Ooh.
I've been saving up for months and I got a saw stop.
Dude,
And
nothing
so
better feeling in the world. Like I don't think people enjoy because they use the credit cards or whatever, but when you have to save monthly for something and then you finally get it, dude, it just feels so good.
Yeah, I've been saving up for a while for that, and I've saved up and I got the saw stop. And so it's in there now. I just need to get the dust collection. Just need to get the dust collection up. Yes, they gave me a stool sample. Just need to get the dust collection up and running. And as soon as the dust collection is up and running, I'm going to start running stuff through the saw. But I'm excited about the saw stop. It was a bit of a pain to put together. I had some problems with the shipping.
Yeah, I'm definitely jealous. I'm considering going to a track saw simply because my garage is so small and I need to maximize space. And to be honest with you, I've built so few enclosures compared to what I normally do that a track saw may be the way to go for me.
I thought long and hard about it. I had a good conversation with Stu from Stu's Custom Shop there, and he's a big track saw fan. And a track saw would have been an option, but I just kind of like years ago decided that one day I want to save up enough money to buy a saw stop, and that's what I did. It's not the top of the line saw stop by any stretch of the imagination. It says they have 4 models. Their beginning model is, hey, Baba, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Appreciate that a whole lot. The entry level model saw stop is like the saw that I had. It folds up, right? So it's a work site saw. You roll it to the work site. Fantastic saw. It's like $1,800.
Right.
It's like, okay, mine was like less than 300. So,
right.
Andy, good to see you. Glad to see you pop in. But that little saw, it did a good job. It was getting old. It was beginning to wear out. I sold it this last weekend to somebody. So, you know how things go. It's kind of get rid of the old tools. Kind of sad to see it go because I've done so much cool stuff with that thing. But having a good solid saw is just something I've been wanting for a long time. The next one up was the one that I got. That's what they call the contractor saw. So this is, cast iron top. It's the motor is on a belt, so it's belt driven.
Right.
And, it sits on a base. It sits on rollers. I opted to expand it a little bit. So I got 3 feet of cut width on it. I can rip 3 feet wide. And the next level up, they call that the cabinet saw.
Right.
I forget what they call it, but then the next level is the professional saw. I like that professional saw. You can get like a 10 horsepower motor on that thing. And it's like, that's brutal. But there's 2 up level ones. You got to have 220 in order to do it. I don't have any 220 in the garage. It's a 60 amp service. It's got plenty of juice for what I'm going to do. I just don't have any 220 plugs, and that's fine.
Yeah, the saw stop is going to be super nice. It's even their entry level stuff is comparable to some of the nicest Deltas out there. So, at least that you can buy at a regular store.
Yeah, I mean, this is my kind of feeling on the table saw is that 220, 240. It's double of whatever, right? Is a baseline one 110 or is it 120? I mean, it's somewhere between the two.
Yeah. Something like that. But it is. You're right. It's somewhere in between there. It's not always 120.
Right.
Yeah.
But I added a cord reel to the ceiling. I've got plugs in the ceiling, which is real nice. And so so I'm not going to be stumbling over extension cords. And that's probably the one thing I'm looking forward to the most, because I can't tell you how many times I've knocked over the lights that I'm using in the garage and busted one of those $20 light bulbs that you got to use for photography. It's like, there goes a $20 bill. Great.
Yeah. I've considered putting track lighting in here just so I can spotlight different areas. I don't know. I'd like to have a different solution than what I have doing videos.
I've been thinking about that. That'd be kind of cool. Wouldn't mind having some lights hanging off some tracks. So go to Home Depot and get some Unistrut and start hanging some lights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Well, Rob, what have you been up to on your channel lately, man?
Dude, I didn't have a video this week because I've been working on stuff, but I'm doing a crazy test. Stuff may blow up. The patrons have already seen some of the what's going on, but it's going to be cool. I don't want to spill the beans just yet on that, but I'm working. I've got an acrylic streamer, like the one.
All right.
You got the amp. I got the streamer. So that'll be coming up soon. I have some good ideas for that. I also just got a 1500 watt pure sine wave inverter. So a company sent me that, or they reached out to me. I was like, you know what? This is perfect, because this is the perfect way to compare lithium to AGM. I can do the test with a kilowatt meter and we can see what's what.
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds dangerous. All right. So I got a question about that for you right there.
Yeah.
So right now for my amp dyno setup, and if you saw the video that I just dropped, I tested a JP8 and I ran out of juice. So I've got one of those 100 amp power supplies. It's a Power Max. Yeah, it's a PM4 100 amp. Hooked up to a Walmart battery, right? Nothing special there. Just walked in. What's the biggest battery you got? I'll take it. Put it in the cart. Let's go.
Right.
So basically that thing, you get about 900 watts and it runs out of juice, right? That's about all I can get out of one of those things. And I happen to have two plugs on separate circuits, 20 amp circuits, in one in that far corner, right? One of those plugs is all by itself. And somehow the electricians ran through. I was like, oh yeah, there's only one on that one. Great. That's actually perfect, right? So now I can hook up two of those.
Yeah.
If I had two of those, what kind of battery system do I need in order to support a bigger amplifier? Because I'd love to be able to test a 3,000 watt amp. I don't know if I'll ever be able to. Maybe 1,500 will be my max.
So right now I have 4 H8 Walmart AGMs, and I can test 3,000 watts with those 4 and the 100 amp Power Max. So I switched to the Power Max. I have the Cosell. I could do a little more. No, the Cosell I could do 3,000 watts with those 4. The Power Max I can do like 2,500-ish watts with those 4. But I mean, I would consider lithium. Dude, they're so expensive, but it's expensive to get 4 of those batteries.
Right. Though the Power Max owner's manual said that they didn't recommend using them with lithium batteries. Are they wrong?
Well, I mean, you can control how far you want to charge it, so you're choosing your voltage.
Right, because you can adjust the voltage on the Power Max. Yeah.
Yeah, and that Power Max also has just a current and then a charge state.
Right.
So
it has.
You can set it to like say the it's like 14.8 it's the max charge. You can set it to 14.8, put it on charging, it'll only charge at 14.8.
So Adir, if I ever find my 10 millimeter, I'll let you know. Oh, hey, there was a question on the screen I wanted to ask you. Let me go to that question real quick before we get back to the battery. Bandsaw. What are your thoughts on a bandsaw in a DIY audio shop?
I love them. I sold mine because it took up 2-inch room. I had a really nice 12-inch Craftsman, an old one, and that I got from a buddy. But man, it just took up some. You got a shop though, so I'm working out of a garage. You're working out of a shop. If I had a shop, 100%, I'm having a bandsaw in there, just for not only for cutting like small things, but cutting curves or anything. It's just nice to have them.
Yep. Yeah, because you can make your own curved templates. Jason, I forgot what size the battery was. I just the biggest one on the bottom shelf at Walmart, whatever that was. It was a 1,000 gazillion cold cranking amp battery. It was a huge one. But okay, so the way those Power Max inverters work, for those who don't know, there's 2 controls on it. And they're recessed inside the frame. You got to take a little screwdriver in there. You can hardly see it. You got to get your light out on your phone so you can see what's going on. And one of them is a switch between the 2 modes. One mode is a charging mode, which is kind of its intended use. And what it's designed to do is to actually take care of the battery. Yeah. Right? It's a battery maintainer and charger. And the idea here is it's made for someone who has like a mobile home, not a mobile home, an RV. Right. Or a boat or something. So you pull in, you plug this thing in, you charge your batteries. That's what it's made for. And then it has a potentiometer, so you can set the voltage down to 12, up to about like 15 or 16. I think you can really crank it up. Yeah. And so the other mode, the voltage control does the same thing, but the other mode is just like full on power. We're going for it, right? It's not because the first mode, it'll actually monitor the batteries. It'll give them a lot of juice until they get them topped off, and then just kind of maintain them. And so during the test, you put it on the let's go mode, right? You put it on go mode. And I'm always a little freaked out by that, because I remember when I was a kid growing up on the farm, I was out in the tobacco patch with a hoe, the tool, not the hoe and tobacco. And I heard this loud explosion come from the shop right next to the tobacco patch. And I thought to myself, oh crap, something's happened, and it sounded like a gun going off, and it was a battery that blew up. And it's like, my dad was in there with it, and he didn't seem too rattled by it, because old man like that, nothing rattles him. It scared the hell out of me. I thought someone had gotten shot. And so that's left me scarred. And so I'm scared of blowing up a battery.
Yeah.
And so I want to not blow up any batteries, and I want to be able to test amplifiers up to about 3,000 watts.
Yeah, you just need more. Uh, As long as you don't overcharge them, you're going to be okay. Because, a lead acid is just as volatile if you overcharge it as a lithium.
Gotcha.
So,
No, this was on it was on one of those boosters that you plug into the wall so you can jump a battery off.
right,
I mean, it wasn't on a battery tender or anything like that.
right.
Yeah,
And the good thing about, like, if you're doing DIY lithium or you're buying a lithium, a lot of those have battery management systems. AGM batteries do not.
right.
So there are protection circuits in place to stop bad things from happening. Now, if you're doing DIY lithium and you don't have any kind of active balance or any kind of BMS, you're talking something totally different.
Right. Oh, well, and the thing is, I noticed, and I've learned this from watching your channel for sure. A lithium battery is expensive, but that little expensive lithium does what four big AGMs do, and
Yeah.
they cost the same and take up less space.
And I've got more that I want to play with. It's just a matter of making the bus bars, which I could use my drill press for if I had bought a good drill press. I bought the cheap Harbor Freight one. Do not recommend. 100% do not recommend.
That's the bench top one, right? The little bench
Right.
top one.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I, we earlier before you jumped on, we talked about the drill press, and our kind of our metric was you have enough space for one thing, like a beer fridge or a drill press. What are you going to have, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so I think, okay, really nice drill press or bandsaw. Which would you pick?
Bandsaw for sure.
Bandsaw. All right.
Yeah, because you can use the blocks for, to get a straight drill if you need to.
Yeah. Our buddy Andy says he likes the LifePo 4. That's the lithium ferrous phosphate or something like that.
Yeah.
Better power per density, but aren't as safe. BMS are the key with any lithium setup. All right.
Definitely.
Compressors. What are your thoughts on air compressors? Have you tried
Quiet
the
as
California?
possible.
Yeah. When they were building the garage, they used the quiet one from Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was really quiet. I was shocked, and it did just fine. So,
Dude, I've had very good luck with Harbor Freight compressors. Even the oilless kind, the ones that people hated back in the day, they've been pretty solid. Although I have went through 2 pancake ones, but let me tell you, I abused the crap out of those things. There was no care, no maintenance, no nothing, and they just burned a piston up. I just ran them till they died.
oh, here we go. Clicked on the wrong one. I want you to. What do you think about this one? 1, 2, 3 block. You familiar with the 1, 2, 3 block?
Yeah.
Use them in machine shops a lot. They're like
Yeah.
1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inch, and they have holes measured out in them.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen those and thought I might want one. So
Yeah.
one thing that I did get, and I saw it on your channel, the and mine's a Klein actually, the little magnetic level gauge that you put on your table saw, so you can make sure your angles are perfectly right. So
Yeah.
so I've got one of those as well. So that's definitely a must-have little tiny tool. So
Yeah, it's definitely like plus you got to true your saw when you set it up, and it's gonna be useful for that. So,
yep. Well, all right, Rob. Thank you for popping in. We are past an hour, and that's usually where I want to stop. So, and
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to seeing what you're about to blow up on your channel.
Something, always something.
I'm not sure what my next video is going to be. It might be the actual video where I introduce the shop to the channel. So, and Stu is right. These Woodpecker and Incra make some really nice stuff. Love to add some of those to the. I'd like to get out of the Harbor Freight T-squares
Right.
and go to the Woodpecker and the Incra. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week over on Nick's channel, assuming he gets his power back. I'm the DIY audio guy, and I am out.
Later.